Welcome to you specifically to the country. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
Good, good, good. All right, now, can you tell us a little bit more about the International African Writers Conference? What are the objectives, really?
Thank you very much. The International African Writers Conference, of course, it was inspired by the International African Writers Day that was declared by the OAU in 1991 to celebrate the contribution of the African writer in the development of the continent. So we thought instead of just celebrating one day, let's rather have a conference where we gather scholars from around the continent, the diaspora, and the world to interrogate what is happening on the continent and what artists, particularly literary artists, can do to take forward the development of the continent.
Yeah, which, I mean, when you look at literary greats, like your father, for instance, I mean, Achebe, who is absolutely amazing, Chinua Achebe, who, you know, has gone down in history books and possibly regarded as one of the most influential and respected African writers of our time. You know, this obviously playing a massive influence in your life.
It certainly did.
Yeah.
It certainly did, even though I am not a creative writer.
Yeah.
But his example, my mother's example, sort of helped shape my own academic career.
Yeah.
And so I am an Africanist historian, and I work on women, gender, especially in West Africa. So
now, I'm reading your research interests, and I mean, just to tell viewers, they used the use of oral history and the study of women, gender and sexuality in Nigeria.
Yes.
Has there been a positive shift in how stories are told about African women?
yeah, I think slowly but surely. The reason why I decided to do what I do is that being a graduate student, you know, working on my PhD in the early 90s in the US, that was the beginning of women's history, I would say. And a lot of the books, the scholarly books that were out there, were very Eurocentric in their interpretations of African women. And so I remember sitting, you know, in a class as a student and wondering, who exactly are these African women that these authors are talking about? Who are these women that they're claiming are sold to the highest bidder for their reproductive and productive labor? That certainly wasn't me, nor was it my mother or any African woman that I knew.
Yeah.
And so for me, getting into African women's history was wanting to see myself in history and wanting to tell a different story. And that's what I think that I've started to do.
Amazing.
With my first two books and, you know, the slew of articles that I've written, all on women and gender.
It's changing perceptions.
Yes.
And I think that's the way to do it, is through literature. Because that's, I mean, when one looks at how influential it's become and is on a daily basis, you know, this is the one way of doing it. And is that really ideally what the literary awards are looking at?
Yes, the awards, of course, come on the last day of the conference to celebrate these writers. They look more around South Africa, but we are looking beyond that from next year onwards. And we're quite delighted to have our comrades and sisters here, and Comrade Nwando, and a host of other writers who are coming here to be with us from today until the 9th. And of course, tonight we've got Dr. Kaloko, who's the AU Commissioner for Social Affairs, who's going to give the title lecture, the International African Writers Day lecture. So indeed, I'm at one with my comrade and sister here in terms of what literature is doing and what it can do.
Let's talk about that. Let's get a little bit more, I suppose, philosophical and how African writers have actually contributed to the development of the continent. What have they done?
Well, I will speak from a historian's perspective.
Please do. I think we need to look at that.
Yes, as a historian, especially someone who teaches about Africa, you know, outside the continent, African writers have played a significant role in telling the histories of a people whose histories have been shrouded by a whole lot of secrecy and just incorrect misinformation. And so, as an Africanist historian, when I teach about Africa, I always teach about Africa through novels, because that's one of the easiest ways, one of the most accessible ways, I think, for students to learn about the continent from an indigenous point of view, which is very important to me, that students start sort of learning about how it is that Africans conceptualize their own worlds and, you know, what being African means to Africans as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah.
Because that's what we have. A lot of what we have in scholarly work has been written by others about Africa. So for me, that's one way to highlight the African voice and the African point of view,
Yeah.
which oftentimes is missing.
And I'm reading the title of your presentation that you're going to be giving at the conference. The Year Will Not Be Good. Ogidi Women's Market Revolt of 1914.
Yes. Yes.
Quickly, give us a synopsis. I can't just give that title and leave it like that.
Well, this particular talk is about a revolt that happened in 1914 during the colonial period in my home village, Ogidi, in eastern Nigeria. And what it was is that there was a warrant chief that was put in to government by the British. And the Igbos have no kings. They're a gerontocracy, leadership by elders. And so what the British did is that they put in this one person, gave him a warrant and said, you have now become a king. And he became an autocratic leader, which the people just didn't have a place for. In 1914, this particular leader decided to move the market. The market is the woman's domain. Women own the market. They define the market rules and regulations. There's a market deity. And this leader moved the market without consulting with the women nor the market deity. And so the women had to make war to get the market back to its original place. And that's a talk that I'm giving.
That's amazing.
The war that the women made on the colonial government and the colonial government's official to right the wrongs that they had done.
Well, whoever's going to be there and listening to it, I'm sure is going to be absolutely riveted by it. It sounds absolutely incredible. The award ceremony happening on Saturday night, and that's taking place at Museum Africa in Newtown. So I wish you all the best with it. And this is a fantastic initiative. And thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having
on
me.
Morning Live and for gracing this particular thing with your presence. I think it's a great thing for the event. Nwanda Nchebe, the African author and scholar, Professor Nwanda Nchebe, and of course the project director for African Century International African Writers Conference, Morakabe Rax Seakwa. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.